Well, tell a friend to tell a friend, and you can share this with a friend on this 17th day of May. It's another Wellness Wednesday. Yours truly, Joe Dupree in the building. 100 BLK, the Black Station. My brother Edward J. Brown in the building from
What's
Positive
up?
Choices Counseling Service, and this is how we do it.
Just all around good guy. That's what I like to think. What's
Ah,
going on, brother?
we in the building, y'all, because on this Wellness Wednesday, we always tackle and engage on mental health issues, especially in the communities of brown and black folks like you and I, because a healthy you
Is a better you.
is a better you. That part.
What's
So,
going
how
on,
you
man?
doing, my brother?
Man, look, I wanna, let folks know that even Superman had to go sit on the sun to rejuvenate every now and then. And last weekend, last Wednesday, I wasn't feeling too hot.
Hey, it happens.
We really got to look at things. Those of us who have chronic illness, I suffer from Crohn's disease, and my Crohn's was acting up, and I just wasn't feeling it. So I took a minute to get myself together.
Yeah.
So I always tell my staff, I'd rather you take off a day or two than to be out 2 or 3 weeks. So you got to take care of yourself, and that's why I was up. But I want to go ahead on and tell y'all something that I know he doesn't care much about. Y'all see all the new stuff with the mic and the better lighting and everything. My brother drove all the way to Natchez to set me up to make sure I look just as good as he do every Wednesday. So I don't have a bell, so I'm gonna have to you know uh, kudos to my brother for coming down and making sure that if we do this, that we do it right. And that's what you did. You just came and make sure that if we do this, that we're gonna do it right. And I
Hey, man,
appreciate you, my brother.
we've been rocking for years. You are my brother from another mother.
Yes,
And
sir.
man, I
Yes,
love
sir.
you
Absolutely.
dearly. And I'm going to tell you
Same
straight
here.
up, man, I really appreciate all that you do. And listen, it was my pleasure to come hang with you to make sure that we had everything correct. That when people receive this information, we want them
Correct.
to receive it in a manner where they can run with it, where they can be a blessing not only to themselves, but to their family, but to other individuals in our community that may need mental health services. Like I said, it's very
Absolutely.
taboo. We know, people don't want to talk about the mental health side of things.
Ooh,
Everybody talking about it now, but the question is, since you're talking about it, where the money at? Where the funding?
exactly. Look, we
Since
used to
everybody want
always
to
say
talk
years
about it, where
ago,
the
it
money?
was three things people didn't like to talk about. One was death, one was sex, and the other one was your mental health. People don't like to talk about those things.
Oh, they
And
don't.
money. We put that in it. So we at the point now where we cannot not talk about mental health. And that is why this commitment that you and I made almost 3 years ago is
Correct.
still going strong. It's still
Very.
going strong. I want to say this real quick
Go ahead.
in regards to this podcast. People have been coming to me lately saying, I watched the podcast and there's some things about the podcast I want to say. There's some things I wish you would talk about. And what I want to do this first 2 minutes is say if there's ever anything that we do not address on this podcast, the number is scrolling across the screen
It is.
throughout the entire podcast. You don't have to wait until Wednesday to reach out. You can reach out to me and my office at any time. The number will be posted on this podcast throughout the entire show. So
Right.
do not just think after Wednesday, you have to wait till next Wednesday to get in touch with me. That is not so. It is May is Mental Health Awareness Month. I have my mental health awareness, be kind to your mind, mental health awareness shirt. But we
Come
do
on.
this every Wednesday.
Right.
We do it every Wednesday because every Wednesday, is mental health awareness for us. So I want you to know that even after the lines are gone and the podcast is over, I can still be reached as well as Brother Dupree. If you know him and you don't know me, you can reach me through him. So I don't want people to think this is just a media thing. This is a life changing thing.
Correct.
This is
Correct.
something we're trying to do to change people's lives. So don't hesitate to reach out. All right. So anyway, what's going on, brother? You say you had something that was on your mind and on your heart that had
Well,
me kind of intrigued?
well, the last show we did, we were going to, we started the conversation about substance abuse because it was very important. But in the midst of us talking about substance abuse, we had to switch lanes because once again, another mass
Mass shooting.
shooting had
Right.
occurred in this country. And let me tell you something, when the mass shooting occurred, a lot of folks started getting on here and saying, we really need to talk about mental health and guns. We got to talk about it.
Mhm.
And folks said they very much want us to come back to the substance abuse, but they said you can't just jump into this thing with,
Correct.
with the guns and the mental health and just stop talking about it. So I'm not sure how I tag this show, but I am saying this. We need to continue that conversation. And they were very intrigued with a lot of things you were talking about, especially when it comes down to we've got to start talking about funding. Look, Ja Morant,
Absolutely.
Ja Morant.
Absolutely. Here we go.
I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. Ja Morant, that plays for the Memphis Grizzlies, was once again suspended because he was brandishing a gun on social media. Now, here's the crazy thing. I just think you need to get a better group of people you hang around.
Correct.
That video, you didn't post that video. Ja Morant didn't post the video. One
His
of his
friends did.
friends, one of his
Mhm.
so-called friends posted the video. So, but at the end of the day, family, we got to stop all this playing with guns because guns are not playthings. They're
No,
not.
no, no. And when you think about it, one of the things about that situation that was very unique was when this brother got caught, for lack of a better term, the first time, the thing that was most profound that he said is, "That's not who I am.
Mm,
I'm not that kind of guy." But here we are again with the same behavior. You are that kind of guy. So now what we have to do is, if that is your behavior pattern, we need to look at that and figure out what we can do to change it. Because behavior can be changed.
correct.
So, but you cannot change something where you don't see a problem.
Mm,
We continue the same destructive behavior. Let me tell you something about this young brother. This young brother ain't no gangster. He's a basketball player. Gangsters are out doing gangster stuff, not playing basketball, not making
correct.
millions of dollars playing a sport. You riding around in your car impressing your friends, and I use that term loosely because your friends wouldn't put you on display like that, considering what you just came through. He is trusting the wrong people in his circle.
That's true.
Now, I just threw out that big old word trust. How many of us are trusting people that don't deserve our trust?
Mm,
Yeah, I know I threw that out there, and
mm,
that's gonna be a little hard hitting for
mm.
some folks, because you know these folks that you trusting don't have your best interest in mind, yet we continue to give them chance after chance after chance to be what we want them to be and not what they are. John Moran is showing the NBA and the Memphis Grizzlies what he really is.
Wow.
And what's the big is that people believed what he told us he was instead of what he's showing us, which is just an immature kid. He's
What?
not a gangster. He's not a pistol toting thug. He's a kid with more money than a kid need to have, and he can buy whatever you want to buy and do whatever you want to do. And now his circle is not as trustworthy as he thought.
So I do want to say this, and I really want y'all to catch this when I say this. This is crazy. Today I was in court. I was in court, my brother. I was in court. And I was in court and I got to hear a family address an individual who in gun violence had taken their son's life. And let me say something. I feel like anybody who has ever thought about picking up a gun, taking someone's life should have been in that courtroom. The mother addressed the individual and said, listen, I forgive you, but I'll never forget. I forgive you, but I believe you should be held accountable to the highest letter of the law because
Mhm.
my son is not coming back. Death is permanent. there's no going back into the kitchen and hugging that person and sitting down having a meal with that person or riding somewhere with that person. Once a person is dead, they're not coming back. Not to this side. Not to this side. You won't have the physical feeling and the love and hearing their heartbeat or watching their chest rise or seeing them breathe and have fun and enjoy something. Now, the young man who was murdered by the other young man has a child himself. That's a 4-year-old child. That child will never see his father as he grows old. The 4-year-old right now is telling everybody, my daddy's an angel. He's in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And as he gets older, Lord knows what the mental state of this young man will be now that his father has been transitioned to the other side due to gun violence. He was shot in the back by the other young man.
And here's the part we really have to address.
Come on.
Over what? Over what? That's where I come in. Let's look at the behavior. Over what? A disagreement?
Mm.
An argument?
Mm.
Let's say a woman. Let's say money.
Mm.
But we always want to throw out, you can't disrespect me. If it is one thing we as people of color have endured for many years, is disrespect.
Mm.
I love when I sit with my students and they say, well, I couldn't have been no slave, as if the slaves chose that life.
Right. As if it was a choice.
Yeah, if it was a choice. What happens is when you are faced with survival, self-preservation will kick in.
Mm.
Now, because someone cursed you or said something ugly to you or is not self-preservation, that's your feelings being hurt. So what happens when we go to gun violence is we change not just the victim's life, but the perpetrator's life as well. That victim's family is impacted. That perpetrator's family is impacted.
Correct.
Society is impacted because now we have to deal with the stereotypes of what type of person committed that crime.
Correct.
He must be from a family without a father.
Mm.
They must be low income. He's illiterate. He didn't go to school. And so what's all the issues with John Morant? No, John Morant has not killed anyone. However, he portrays the image as if though he could.
Mm.
And he's an educated young brother.
Right. I mean, the mother said, now I'm going first to the mother. When the mother got on the stand and made her statement to the individual who is now getting ready to get sentenced for the death of her son, she said, nobody wins in this thing.
Yeah,
She said,
absolutely not.
my son is in the grave. I'll never see him again. You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison, and your mother can only see you through visitations at that prison. She said, no one wins in this situation. And she
So what do we do?
She said something that was so deep to me. She said, all you had to do was just man up and fight, my son, and none of us would be here today.
Well,
now that was the mama.
Ooh.
Hold on. The dad got on the stand. The young man's father, who bared his name, because the son was a junior and the dad was a senior. He got on there and said something that just was mind-blowing to me. He said, barbarians fight. He said, Vikings fight. He said, men fight. He said, cowards shoot.
So where has this consistency of gun violence been normalized? Where
Correct.
has it become normalized? In media, in neighborhoods? Do we perpetuate and make our heroes perpetrators of violence? Or our video game? I remember there was a study done almost, maybe 40 years ago.
Mm.
And they said there were only 4 video games out of thousands that was not violent.
Mm.
And one of them was Wheel of Fortune. The other was Jeopardy. I think one was Bingo and something else. Even Pac-Man, you got to eat the pellets so you can go eat the ghost.
Right. True. True.
You know what I mean? Mario jumps up and pounds somebody on the head. And I had to think about it. You know, I'm like, wow, I never thought about that. Out of thousands of video games, only 4 did not involve some type of physical violence. So when we start looking at our children and the dynamics in the communities and the neighborhoods that our children come up in, why have we normalized the use of violence to resolve disagreement? And that's what we got to start looking at.
Right.
You know, we have a 6-year-old that can bring a gun to school. What 6-year-old know where the guns are?
Correct. Or better yet, what a gun actually does.
Well, you know, think about that. We do you buy your children guns when they're kids? I had a cowboy with the hat and the Roy Rogers deal with the hat and the gun. And, yeah, I had all that.
We played cops and robbers when we were kids. You're right.
We played, you know, cops and robbers. But we are at the point now where there was not rap music glamorizing the spreading of the cat. And we have to start looking at how we receive violence in our community.
Correct. Correct.
We couldn't wait for the new John Wick movie to come out.
We couldn't. That's true. It's very true.
Yeah. Everybody was like, "Ooh, the new John Wick come out." We have to start taking responsibility for the way we perpetrate and the way we receive violence in our society. Think about this.
So
every mass shooting that there is.
Hold on. I need you to bookmark what you're about to say for 1 second. I just thought about something. We haven't been on in 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, there has been 4 mass shootings since we last came on. And we came on the last time and got into a deep conversation because of a mass shooting.
Wow.
Just to say, continue on.
We have to start looking at, do we teach our children, well, if somebody hits you, you hit them back? Or do we teach them, if somebody hits you, you stab them with a pencil, or you shoot them? You know, we have to start looking at the way when there's a mass shooting, every station, from CNN to Fox News to MSNBC, all stop everything they're doing to talk about the mass shooting. I like that CNN has a practice to where if it's a mass shooting, they refuse to say the shooter's name. I'm not going to give you any type of notoriety because you want to kill people in large numbers with weapons of mass destruction.
Correct.
But we all have to look at ourselves and decide, what can we do? Because we talked about it last time we were on. There's regulations for alcohol.
Come on.
There's going to be regulations for marijuana. It's
Correct.
just not hitting yet. There's going to be regulations for marijuana. Why do we not have regulations for weapons of mass destruction?
Well, let me ask a better question. Since, we're getting ready to get into an election season and folks going to have to start choosing who they need to vote for. Let me ask you this. How many books has actually killed somebody? How many books? How many books have you read that after you read that book, there was somebody laid out dead on the floor for reading that book? Question. These questions need answers, because we're not banning assault style weapons, but we are banning books. We have folks in the state of Florida that are banning books, and I ain't never seen a book kill nobody. But we are not banning.
But the subject matter in the book make me feel bad.
Right.
Make me feel bad about myself.
The subject matter in that book make me feel like, I may my ancestors may have enslaved a few folks. I'm just saying, I don't understand how we can how we can ban books,
Well,
but we won't
it,
ban
it, you know,
our weapons.
again, unfortunately, as a behaviorist, and we look at it from a behavior perspective, people don't care about things until it touch home.
Mm,
Being from the city of New Orleans, and at one time we were one of the most violent cities in the country,
mm,
I know the impact of violence on families. I came from a program where we started providing counseling to survivors of homicide victims. And early on in my career, I saw the impact of what one bullet can do to an entire family. And I started to say, we have to get these young brothers to care more about what they think than what their friends think,
correct.
because that's what is the reason that causes them to perpetrate this violence. But what I'm gonna look like if I just let him get away with that? You're gonna
Come
look
on.
like you live, my brother. That's what you're
Right.
gonna look like. You're gonna look
Right.
like you're alive and you're not in jail. But
So family,
unfortunately, we don't have enough of us preaching that right now. We don't
right.
have enough of us talking about that right now.
So we have a lot of folks online right now, and that's the question I want to put out there to everybody who's on this podcast right now. Be it that you're online, be it that you're calling in. If you want to call in, you can call in. Let me give you right quick how you can call in. There's a number of ways you can call in, but let me go ahead and give that to you. If you're calling in or if you're online right now, what can we do to stop all this gun violence? What is your if you're on this podcast right now, you can either call in and let us know, or you can just put a comment in. What do you feel like is a resolution? Because we talk about the problem, I don't see too many people putting answers out there. What can we do to resolve this issue of this constant gun violence in this country? These mass shootings. How do we, the last mass shooting that happened in New Mexico, the 3 individuals who died were all elderly folks in their 70s. One person was in their 90s. That's not how you're supposed to leave in the 90s. You're supposed to close your eyes one day and wake up on the other side. You're not supposed to be ushered there by an individual walking around with a gun. And if there is such a mental health problem, why are we not putting funding into mental health services to help resolve these issues?
Well, we've talked about it so many times on this podcast that we are a reactive society, and we don't take up something until it causes us to react instead of taking a proactive. Okay, think about it this way. They started saying, okay, well, we don't want children driving and killing folks, so you got to be 16 before you can get a permit, and then you can get your driver's license. Okay, that was regulation. We started saying, well, prohibition is over, so now we can sell alcohol, but you can't buy it until you're 21. You can't go to the casino until you're 21. You can't buy cigarettes and give yourself lung cancer until you're 21. But you can go and buy an AR-15 when you're 18.
Mm.
And as a matter of fact, not just one, you can buy as many as you can afford.
Mm.
I don't understand how we are at this point in our society where we no longer are willing to say we have to have regulation. And it would be different if we were calling for regulation and there was no reason for it. You understand? If there hadn't been multiple mass shootings, then it makes sense. Well, why are they calling for regulations for these weapons of mass destruction? Doesn't make sense. But there's a mass shooting every week.
Hold on. If I'm correct right now, we have more mass shootings that have occurred this year than there are numbers of days in this year. So family, we got to wake up. And here's the ultimate question. I asked myself this day when I was in court and I saw the young lady and I saw the young man and I saw the grandmother of the young man. And that made me know that he's got a son that will never. Here's the question. When it comes to your doorstep and the rooster start crowing, what's your philosophy then? And sad to me, most of us, like you said, we don't react until it hits our home. And if it hasn't hit our home, then all of a sudden it's like, well, no. If your child commits a heinous crime and has to spend the rest of their life in prison, or your child is the victim of an individual who has taken their life. I got the phone call this week, which I'm going to share some of my personal business. I got the phone call this week that one of my daughters was in a terrible car accident. Her vehicle may be totaled, and it was not her fault. When you get those type calls, it puts you in a place where you're like, oh my God, what do we do? And so you should be that way with everyone, because those roosters can show up to your doorstep and start crowing when you least expect it, Brother Brown.
Well, it's at the point now where we can talk and we can beat this horse until we get it to the group. But at the end of the day, the question is still on the table. What are we going to do to change the ideology about violence and gun violence in this society that we live in? Is it a mental health issue or is it a social issue? My opinion is it's both.
Right.
We do not address mental health until mental health comes and becomes in mainstream society.
Correct.
This guy, the Marine, ex-Marine that choked the brother on the train. Well, that guy was mentally ill and he was going to hurt somebody. Okay. His mental health. Well, what I found out just from reading was that he had attempted to get mental health help several times and was denied. He wasn't harming anyone. He was talking loud. It's New York City. You can go on any corner in New York City and see somebody talking loud.
Amen. I lived there long enough to know.
but we have people, 6-year-olds bringing guns. We have men, feeling it's okay to abuse women. We have young kids feel it's okay to shoot their teacher. We have students who believe it's okay to hit and strike teachers.
Right, because
we have normalized violence.
Right.
In our society, to where there is nothing that's off limits. I'm from a society where the thought of touching one of your teachers is absurd to me. It's absolutely absurd to think of hitting someone. I see the comment, from my brother where we talk about electing people. We do have to go out to the polls and we have to vote. We have to elect people who have the same ideologies on certain. That's what we talk about when we say understanding what a person's platform is. The first thing I ask people when they say, "Oh, I'm so and so, I'm running for this, that I hope I can count on your vote. What's your stand on mental health?"
Right.
That's the first thing I ask. But my brother's right. There is a lot of money that's thrown out by the NRA. And a lot of people don't want to make the NRA angry and not get that endorsement.
Correct.
But right now, the NRA is still pushing the legalization of assault rifles.
Well, hold it, because they come with this philosophy. They say, now see, here's where people cannot play the devil's advocate and people cannot play both sides, because somewhere along the line, this has to get fixed. When you talk to folks in the NRA, I'm a stark believer in the Second Amendment right. I believe you need to bear arms. It's always funny to me how we can bear arms until black folks start bearing arms. Then all of a sudden we need to talk about them bearing arms. But they say people kill people. Guns don't kill people. Okay, well, if that's the case, then all these folks that are being murdered in these mass killings, then they go to mental health. But then when you go to Congress, here's what I tell them: watch what they do, don't watch what they say. Okay, everybody who's talking mental health, if you go watch their record on voting for mental health funding, what you will find out
is audio don't match their video.
Right, they have not voted one time to abstain and to keep mental health services in a place where folks can get the help they need, where there won't be these so-called mental health crises. So here's what I have a problem. When I see a Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she's talking along with the
speaking of mental illness.
Right. Talking to Kevin McCarthy, along with this crazy one that comes from Colorado. I say, what is your voting stance? Not what your verbal stance is, but what has your voting stance been in on keeping mental health services and keeping folks at a place where they can be safe? Well, of course, when it comes down to social services, period, most folks who are in the Conservative Party don't believe in social services. That's why now they're trying to put that on the table to keep the debt ceiling. And they're like, oh, yeah, we'll raise it, but here's what you got to start doing. And don't get me wrong. I believe that if folks are getting any type of social help, it should be a temporary thing unless they're in a permanent situation, such as mental health. Mental health ain't a temporary thing. Folks who have mental health issues, those aren't things that just come and go. There are permanent situations. I digress and turn it back over to my brother Edward.
It's even more simplistic as that, my brother. I'm going to take everybody that's listening to this podcast. I'm going to take you on a little 2-minute journey. You're at home and you sent your child off to school. And as you decide, I'm off from work, kids go to school, I have a little peace and quiet. I can do some things that I want to do and not have to deal with mama, daddy. And halfway through your morning, around 11 o'clock, you get a text message. And the text message says, Dad, Mom is an active shooter. I love you. Immediately, the level of anxiety that you feel is off the chart. It just touched home for you. It's not a show on television. It's not a breaking news. It is real. And before you can do anything, you grab your keys and you out the door to your son or daughter. You don't know what the situation is because you haven't made it. I am so tired as a advocate, someone that advocates for policy change, I'm so tired of trying to make this issue matter to people before it hits home. I am a very proactive person because the field that I'm in is reactive. I've been in this field 33 years. And I have yet to have that person come to my door and say, you know what, Doc? I'm here because my life is just absolutely wonderful. Everything is perfect. Everything's going good. And I just thought I needed a little counsel. I've never had that client yet. Everyone comes because there's something that they could use help. Well, some things could have been prevented if they had taken action sooner. That's what we have to do in regards to our outlook on violence in our culture. Everything is video. And I'm going to show you. If you think I'm lying, let me show you what I'm talking about. How many videos have you watched in the past month of somebody fighting online and all of the people was around just watching? Nobody broke it up. We do not intervene. We record now. We had George Floyd video his assassination. The brother who was choked out in New York was videoed. We have to start taking an active stance, saying, you know what, we want these weapons of mass destruction that kill a lot of people real fast. We want them in the hands of people that's specially trained. You want, security for your family? Get a gun, a handgun. Get a shotgun. You do not need an AK-47. You do not need an AR-15. You do not need these, high, what's the caliber clips, 30 clips. You don't need that.
Mm.
What I want us to do is to stop talking and start doing something. When you see people interacting, say, brother, stop. Y'all stop before it goes too far. Nobody's going to think less of you if you let this go. The thought of how normalized killing one another is.
Mm.
The child ball rolled into his neighborhood, in the yard, and he shot the mother, the father, and the child.
Oh my goodness. See that?
Because the ball rolled into his yard. But we sit here and we constantly wait until the next time and the next time and the next time. And I'm tired of waiting till the next time.
And we have gotten
If we got to call, if like my brother said, if we got to address and somebody got to take on the NRA, we need to stop, because I'm so tired of mental health taking the fall for this.
Right.
When it's not a mental health issue, it's a social issue. We have normalized the killing of one another.
Correct.
Simple as that. We have normalized the destruction of another human being because of what? You got fired from work. Why they fired? Well, they fired me because I was late a couple of times, because I lost my car and I couldn't get to work on time. The train is late sometimes. Okay, so you decide to take your gun and go into the break room and kill everybody in the break room. As the kids are saying, where they do that at? Now, we talked about this, and this is where I'm going to end on this, because when this happened in the Ukraine the other day, and that man looked at that camera, he said, this is not something that happens here. This is what we watch on television that happens in America. I immediately said, so we are the standard for mass shootings in the world. We are the standard. We are the standard for mass shootings in America. In the world. That man said, this don't happen over here. This is stuff we see happening in America. I don't want it to hit our community before we do something about it. I want us to do something about it now. And people ask me, what do we do? When these folks come to you and they want your vote, you ask them. Call their office. Ask them, what's your stand on gun violence? What's your stance on mental health? We are in the middle of, as a mental health provider right now, we're in the middle of, President Biden has lifted the state of emergency for COVID. And there were, 2 million people issued Medicaid because of COVID.
Correct.
Well, now that it's over, these 2 million people are going to lose their Medicaid. Now, here's the part people don't understand. 1 million of those people are receiving mental health services as a result of that emergency
COVID relief
executive order.
Right.
So that's 1 million people that's no longer going to receive mental health services. Y'all think it's something going on now? Wait till these 1 million people can't get their medication. Or these 1 million people can't get counseling. Or the assistance. I'm saying we got to wake up and take a proactive approach instead of a reactive approach. Because I don't want anybody that I love to get hurt by someone that's and this touch really hard. It's very emotional for me right now. Because a very good friend of mine. I was there when his son was born. They all called me uncle. Worked in that mall in Dallas that had that mass shooter a couple of weeks ago.
Right. A person from Lafayette.
And I didn't find out until last week. And I was I literally had to go and sit down because my heart, and I wanted to call and say, "Is he all right?" She's like, "Yeah, he's good." But he was in the mall, and the shooter just didn't make it down to his store. People, I think we need to start calling folks. Start on a local level. Call your councilman. Call the mayor. Call your the alderman, and ask them, what are we doing about gun violence? What are we doing to make sure mental health services are available in our community? I gotta admit, I have very, 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 very committed people in my corner that make sure my mental health is good, so that I can advocate for the clients who trust Positive Choices with their mental health services.
Come on.
They make sure that I'm at my top of my game. But right now, we're getting ready to have a lot of people cut, and we're getting ready to come up, like you said, Brother Dupree, on an election cycle.
Correct.
Now is the time to start holding people accountable.
Right. Right.
What are you going to do about all these people that's going to lose their mental health, their mental health care?
You know, Brother Brown, accountability and responsibility seems to be two archaic words that are not used anymore. You know, I listen, I had to tell somebody, a very spiritual friend of mine, I said, the last time I read in the holy book called the Bible, it said you had to confess with your mouth and believe in your heart. I said, them two things had to work together for you to get the result. You couldn't confess with your mouth and not believe in your heart. You couldn't believe in your heart and not confess with your mouth to get there. These two things come together like peanut butter and jelly. You know, some things, it doesn't work just one and not the other. They have to work together. And I'm asking myself, accountability and responsibility seems to be archaic words that folks don't use no more. And we got to start holding people accountable and responsible. We got to stop watching what they say and watch what they do. If you
what do I always say? The chapter I'm saying, the audio have to match the video.
Come on.
The audio is not matching the video. So what we're doing now,
if you tell me, Brother Brown, if you tell me you're concerned about the community and you are a public servant, and I pull up your voting record and you haven't voted for one thing to help the community, what you're saying ain't matching with what you're doing. If you're not helping people with grassroots funding and helping folks, and if you're not doing what needs to be done to help the community, how can you say you for the community?
I think about it in regards to this podcast. We're here every Wednesday, whether anyone tunes in or not.
Yes, sir.
Every Wednesday, because we're committed to making sure that people get exposure. They get to interact with someone in the field of mental health. They just know that somebody cares. That your obstacles in your life are just a path to your breakthrough. Obstacles in your life are not a reason for you to give up. They're a reason for you to say, okay, as soon as I'm done conquering this, that's going to be a testimony. But right now, we're dealing with these folks that's in these ivory towers making these decisions for people like me that's down here trying to do everything I can to get people to hold on. To get people to say, I think I can go on another day. So I'm looking at people that's standing on side of me who are willing to walk in this fight, in this battle with me. And now we got the people in the political sector that's cutting the funding so these folks can't make a living. You understand? As committed as we are, the electric company and the mortgage companies doesn't take commitment as payment.
Correct.
They won't take my commitment and my love for what I do as payment for my house. So you can't keep saying we're going to cut funding for mental health. And this is what I love. Well, Mr. Brown, where do you want us to get the money from? I say we start at the budget for military. We don't need $6 billion plane. Why don't we get 3 and use the other 5, the money you was gonna spend on them, and put it in mental health? Why don't we start teaching our children conflict resolution in the school? Why don't we teach them anger management in the school?
Mm.
Why do we teach them how guns are not the solution? But let's talk it out. But we've taken all of that stuff out of the school. There's no more music in school. The arts is no longer in school. Health is no longer in school. All of these things are getting cut, which is changing the culture for our children.
Mm.
Until we do something about it, we are going to constantly have these mass shootings, people coming up without the skills needed to deal with the daily stressors of life. And that's all this is people are having a hard time dealing with the daily stressors of life. That's why
Correct.
we do this podcast, to give techniques, to give coping skills, to help folks deal with the daily stressors of life. What are you gonna do? How was your day? It was terrible. What do you do? I want to shoot my boss. How about we don't do that?
Right.
How about we don't shoot the boss? Let's do
Right.
something else.
Right. Right. Why don't we sit down and have a conversation about that?
Yeah, let's talk about this. How about we not shoot your boss? Let's not do that. But too often, it doesn't touch home. So I'm at the point where I'm frustrated. I'm tired of having the same conversations, and I'm tired of the wrong people not listening to us.
Mm.
People need to listen to us. The individuals that's out here, our communities are impacted by lack of funding for these programs for mental health. Our communities are impacted by lack of funding for school programs. Our communities are impacted for lack of funding for programs for veterans that come back with post-traumatic stress disorder. We have lack of funding for children. Listen to this, who are dealing with things like divorce in their home.
Correct. Correct.
You understand? It doesn't always have to be a mass shooting. What about the child whose parents are going through a divorce? I sit here on a collegiate level and I look at these students, they come in and they're so stressed because we as instructors have expectations they have to achieve in order to walk across that stage with a degree that says you have met all of the requirements. Can you just go ahead on and pass me? No, I cannot do that. I just got so much on my plate. I understand that. We have to start getting people to listen, because right now, what's happening is there's a crack in the dam and the water is
You're
slowly
right.
dripping through. But you know what's going to happen eventually. Until we start to hold people accountable and say, no, you can't sit there. Trump, I'm going to say it because you can support and believe whatever you believe. And I'm going to go ahead out and say on this, I don't have a problem with Trump support. My problem is with the blind Trump support. The ones that he said he could shoot somebody in the middle of Times Square.
Hmm.
Those people do exist.
True. True.
But
Very
there's
true.
even Trump supporters that's like, he'll live over the top.
Mm-hmm.
I feel you have the right to support whoever you support. But I don't blindly follow anybody. I'm at the point now where we're in this society, and everybody that's watching this podcast or that's gonna watch this podcast that have loved ones that's impacted by mental health decisions need to know the people that are making these decisions. We have a group where we get together and we smoke cigars and we drink a little bourbon, and we basically created this organization as a need to safely get together during COVID in order to just, you know, share issues that we have that's weighing heavy on. And we found out that that group grew from 5 cats to 20 to 30 to 50 because we were all impacted by what was going on socially. None of us had been through a pandemic before.
Correct.
None of us are used to all of these mass shootings.
Mm.
It would be different when we were coming up. We heard, oh, there's a shooting across town. There was a shooting over there. Instead, we hear, oh, it's 8 people that was killed. 8,
Mm.
12 people that were gunned down. What? A school of babies were killed.
Right.
Huh? So, as we watch this podcast and as we decide that we're going to stay committed to our commitment to bring forth issues and coping skills and strategies needed to truly address the issue of mental health, not just in you, but in your house and in your community. Positive Choices is committed. 100 BLK is committed. My brother Joe Dupree is committed. I'm committed.
Right.
And we just need you to constantly stay sharp and stay on your guard, because right now we have people in our area, in our society, that we know that's suffering.
Right.
That's really
tremendously suffering. Yeah.
tremendously. Yeah. And there's no one that's doing anything to help.
Correct.
So as we always say, if it's one person on here Wednesday, we're here. If it's 100 on here, we're here.
We here. Well, you know, I was just sitting here thinking, and I just want to bring this up to folks. We've been talking about gun violence, but just think about this. These are the stresses of life. Let's say that right now you're not making a living wage. I want to put in quotations, living, not a minimum, but a living. And you have to make a decision between paying a bill to keep the lights on and food on the table. That's going to put some mental health stress on you. You got to make a decision between putting clothes on your and your children's back and paying bills to keep a roof over your head. That's going to put some mental health stress on you. And then and here's what's so sad to me, that we will not help fund some of the social services to help folks prevail through these times and these type situations that we want to sit here and talk about in order to raise a debt ceiling and to pay out. Because if I don't pay my bills, there's consequences. So we can sit here and bicker about this country paying its bills with no consequences, that we can actually to the last minute. So if we don't do X, Y, Z, we're not going to raise the debt ceiling. Look, I'm not a political person, but the last time I checked, I got to pay my bills. If I don't pay my bills, there is a consequence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's not just the consequence of the bill not being paid, but the stressor that it puts on you.
Correct.
Nobody likes to get that call. You know,
Right.
I've been sitting at the table with people and they phone ring like, oh, bill collector.
Right.
And you can see the anxiety on their face about it.
Mm.
You know, oh, bill collector. Until the day that we prioritize mental health, guys, we're gonna have some of the problems. And I don't, knock anyone from education to clergy. There is not an arena in our society that is not impacted by mental health. School teachers shouldn't have to be therapists and counselors, but they are.
Yes.
School teachers shouldn't have to be pastors and clergy, but they are. School teachers shouldn't have to be nurturers and parents, but they are. They should be able to be teachers, educators.
Correct.
That's what
Correct.
they should do. But instead, every social problem we have in our society is met by school teachers. Now that's profound. School teachers do not wear one hat. They wear a dozen hats. Because every problem that a child have, we dump it right there in the school with the school teacher.
Ooh.
All right, I know I'm stepping on some toes, but we need to make sure we can help school teachers, parents, grandparents, communities, families, organizations by making sure that mental health services are available in our community.
Amen.
So I challenge everybody that watched this podcast, know who you're voting for, know their stance on mental health, and hold them accountable.
Mm.
Hold them accountable. Don't let them off the hook. Like Brother Duper said, what's your voting record?
Right.
Because I remember there used to be a community center in my neighborhood, and the kids could go there for counseling. It closed down. Why did that close down? Why did it close down? Why do we not have community centers in our communities anymore where people could go if they're having a hard time and could get some counseling? We had a place on Poland where we used to go and play basketball. We could go in and there was a park and it was right connected to a police station. And they would come in every now and then. They would say, y'all put them balls down and sit down because we want to talk to y'all. And they would literally talk to us about being better people. All of that required funding. Fund mental health. And let's make a difference in our community. Let's make a difference with our young people. Let's stop all this gun violence and give people the mental health help that they need. As Dupree, I think we came up on another podcast.
Yes, sir.
Where the information that we gave is invaluable.
Right. Share this with a friend. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Every Wednesday we up on here, 8 to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time.
And as we always say, brother, if nobody else told you today, we love you. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.